Distinguished ambassadors, participants, good morning. It's truly a great pleasure to be with you here today and to witness that once again Bala and his friends have pulled it off. I remember when he first came to me a few years ago with this vision of assembling in Iceland a gathering to discuss startup companies and perhaps how Iceland could become the kind of Davos of the IT and the startup age. I acknowledge that although I was usually prepared to support crazy ideas, this one was perhaps a little bit far-fetched. But then we came together last year in the former American base in Reykjavik, where we replaced the military operations with new thinking, new activities, new enterprises, entrepreneurial alliances, educational institutions, movie making, and the other innovative aspects of what we hopefully will see as the creative, dynamic 21st century economy. And although Harpa is an inspiring location, I must admit, if you don't tell the director of this great building, to some extent I preferred the previous military base. Because there was a lot of message in that location. There was a lot of message in how we can move forward from a period of confrontation and military buildup and spending an awful lot of money on innovation in order to prepare ourselves to kill each other, into transforming our energies into a creative cooperation across national borders. But of course, the Harpa also carries another message. And the message that this building carries is that when you suffer from a financial crisis, what is important is to look at the world with fresh eyes and be prepared to do new things and enter journeys which perhaps, given the financial crisis, most people would have thought impossible. This was, as many of you know, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when the crash arrived, a big black hole. And there were many people in this country who advocated that we should keep it as a big black hole, as a warning to all of us, never again to repeat the exuberance of the financial craziness, as some people say, entrepreneurial side, as others say. But we decided not to keep it as a black hole. We decided not to keep it as a warning. We decided to make it an inspiration that we should move forward and bring cultures and dialogue and discussions and people from all kinds of creative walks of life, not only within our own country, but also from other parts of the world, to make it a symbol of new thinking rather than a warning of previous failures. And I think all of us today realize it was the right choice. Nobody is arguing now we should have kept it as a black hole. Going through the financial crisis was in many ways a dramatic experience. This peaceful society had to witness riots in the streets. There were fires burning in the center of Reykjavik, and the police had to defend the parliament, the central bank, and the prime minister's office. Suddenly, this most peaceful and secure democracies in the world was turned into a battlefield. And for a while, we were not exactly sure how we would move forward. But then gradually, we discovered that somehow paradoxically the financial crisis had unleashed an enormous wealth of creative power. So in the last 4 years, we have seen the creation of more startup companies in more diverse fields than anybody could have imagined. So if you want to draw a simple conclusion, you could even argue that the financial crisis is a pretty good thing for the startup industry. Perhaps a bit too dramatic to move forward in that way. But on a serious note, it has been both revealing as educational to see the wealth of startup companies and their success in the last 4 years in diverse fields, in IT, in computer design, in the tourism industry, even in the fishing sector, the agriculture, in design and fashion, and many other areas. We came to realize that the banks in Iceland, like the banks in the United States and Europe, were not and are not financial institutions in the old-fashioned way. They had become high-tech companies, drawing into their buildings engineers, computer scientists, designers, thinkers, even philosophers, and those who normally would go into innovative sectors of our economies. And we witnessed that companies with promising possibilities in the global market were not able to gather the necessary manpower, the necessary qualified manpower, in order to realize their growth potential. And then the banks failed, collapsed. And suddenly there was available on the market this extraordinary pool of talent. Engineers, mathematicians, designers, IT people, thinkers. And within 6 months, they had all been hired by a wealth of different companies. I think I will never forget that in October, a few weeks after the bank's collapse, when I decided, more in the spirit of the Catholic priest, that I should perhaps travel around the country and listen to people sympathetically and give them encouragement and help them to move forward, not to be broken by this tragic experience. And decided on the first day to go to the Old Harbor area close by, where in my early days of political life I used to campaign in fishing plants and workers' places. And I came to a lunch meeting of CCP. And like most people, I expected everybody to be depressed, pessimistic, even in despair. But there was joy. There was extreme optimism. They even applauded, almost, the collapse of the banks, and the president was highly perplexed. There he was trying to be a father confessor in the tragic period. And he met this crowd full of young people, designers, creative, who saw a great promise, finally the opportunity to get the necessary talent in order to realize their potential. And they told me that whereas they had about 200,000 subscribers worldwide, within 2 years they will double that number. And I have to admit, I didn't really believe them. But they did. And a few weeks ago, they once again filled this entire building with the most impressive, colorful gathering of computer, internet game-playing nerds that you can ever see anywhere in the world. Similarly, Mentor, a small company developed in cooperation between the families and the primary schools here in Iceland, described a few days later. The same vision. But the crash somehow gave them an opportunity to hire the necessary people to move forward, and now they have done so. When the president of Finland came here a few days ago, we organized a special seminar at the university in Reykjavik where a number of IT companies, which even in the few months after the financial crash were still startup companies, described their success to the distinguished Finnish visitor. And I think it was reflective of how important the startup sector has become for our economy that on a state visit, we decide to display in an educational and illustrative way how the startup sector has contributed to the financial recovery of this country. I could go on giving you numerous examples, but many of you will actually know them. But it has made me and many others realize that if we want our countries to be truly competitive in the 21st century global economy, a big financial sector is fundamentally bad news. Even a very successful financial sector is fundamentally bad news. You can even argue the more successful it becomes, the worse will be the future. That is paradoxical, and it goes completely against the prevailing orthodox thinking in the entire Western world. But what we saw here in Iceland is that it is the innovative startup sector in our country, people that start with perhaps just themselves and their power of thinking, or maybe 2 or 3 of their friends, and in a matter of few years have transformed the possibilities in one sector after another in our country. And that is why I believe this gathering is so important. That it's important to continue to assemble you year after year, not just for yourself, but to send to the young generation of our country and others this fundamental message. That is not the old way of doing economics. It's not the old way of doing economic development or prosperity, even in the Western world. We have been given extraordinary opportunities where everybody can be creative, where everybody can become a global player in a matter of few years, where the power of our thinking, of innovation and creativity is stronger than traditional power plants in moving our economies forward. But hopefully also, Iceland can contribute to the dialogue of open discussion on where and how does the IT sector, this information revolution, move forward. Because we are seeing too many warning signals from too many countries and too powerful authorities that somehow want to control this evolution. Admittedly, there are limits to what people should be allowed so they don't harm others. But we need to have an open, free, democratic forum where people who are working on the continuous transformation of our world and our culture and our societies and our thinking through the information technology will be able to come together and discuss in a free way. How is this new century going to be? How is democracy going to be? How will our societies evolve? Somehow, like the square in Athens in ancient times became the open forum, where every idea could be put forward and every idea could be challenged in a free and open way. And maybe if my small country, with your cooperation, can contribute to that global dialogue, I believe we will have done a great service, not just to the future development of our economies, but above all, to the future evolution of our democracy, our free world, our culture, and our humanity. That, to me, this is all about. in a fundamental way. So I thank all of you for gathering here for this purpose, and I wish you great success in these endeavors. Thank you.